I'm Martin Weider, founder and CEO of Weider 360. We do infrastructure inspections with drones. To this date, I am 19 years old, and last autumn I happened to get a project of capturing and inspecting 170 cell towers across entire Bulgaria. I had absolutely no idea how to do this, how to handle such big projects, and in addition, I had no driver's license whatsoever. So I deployed myself and my family to help me. Big thanks to my brother, my grandfather, for basically becoming my personal chauffeur, and somehow we managed. So our framework for capturing the towers was basically make mistake, solve mistake, drive to next tower, repeat. And obviously we had many disappointments, we had many failures, but since we're here and creating this documentary, we somehow survived. So in this movie, in this documentary I have put together for you, I want to walk through exactly how we managed the project, how we coped with it, and what were the challenges, of course. So enjoy the watch. Thank you. Before diving deeper into the documentary, I want to explain a bit about why and how I started this project. When I was 15 years old, I moved from Denmark to Bulgaria, two completely different societies, two completely different countries in terms of people, nature, and history. Due to my family situation, I spent quite a bit of time with my grandparents, and that summer of 2022 left a strong place in my memory. Together with my grandmother, I became very inspired by my ancestors. I tried to collect as much information as I could about them. Where they lived, what wars they had taken part in, whether they were archives with their images, documents, birth dates, or statistics. And that's when I bought my first drone. In fact, the day before I moved to Bulgaria permanently, I bought my first drone from DBA, a Danish second-hand website, for exactly $200. My goal was to document the villages where my ancestors had lived, their abandoned houses and forgotten places, in a more unique way. At first, I only used my iPhone. I bought the drone with me to monasteries and mountain trips, filmed small cinematic shots, and uploaded them to YouTube. Back then, I thought those videos were brilliant. Of course, now I also think my current videos are brilliant, and probably in a year or even tomorrow, I'll look back and think I could have done better. That's how the business slowly started growing. I started reaching out to clients and thinking more seriously about drones as a profession. One day I asked ChatGPT, how can I make money with drones, and which businesses should I approach? Which markets should I target? Around the same time, I saw a LinkedIn post from a Bulgarian guy named Sergey. He had created a 3D model of a historical monument in his hometown, and I was really impressed by the quality. I downloaded the software he mentioned and started experimenting with 3D models of historical buildings. Then ChatGPT suggested that cell towers could potentially be a very, very interesting market to enter, especially considering my relatively small background in drones. So I found a cell tower, took the bus there and created a 3D model. Surprisingly, the first model turned out quite well. I didn't have much experience, but strangely enough, I think the first attempt at something often goes better than the second one. I don't know, what do you think? My second model turned out completely terrible. I uploaded the model to One3D, the platform I had discovered through Sergey's LinkedIn post, and asked for some feedback. The employees at the company gave me some suggestions, and after some time, the CEO reached out and asked me to sign an NDA. That's how everything began, and I signed the NDA, and shortly afterward, I received another email. The next email explained that I would need to capture 150 cell towers across the entirety of Bulgaria. I opened the attached Excel file. Actually, I first had to install Excel because I had never really used it before. Then I started thinking, okay, well, how do I even import 150 coordinate locations into Google Maps? Now I would probably just export everything into a KML file immediately, but at the time I had no experience with that. Thankfully, my aunt helped me organize the coordinates into Google Maps. Once I had all the towers mapped out, I started thinking about logistics. How I would plan the routes, how I would execute the project, and most importantly, who would drive me, because I didn't have a driver's license. I first reached out to a young friend who had a car, but it quickly became clear that it wouldn't work. He started calculating all the costs of fuel, hotels, food, time, and honestly, looking back now, I understand him. I was asking for too much with too little money. At that stage, I barely had any money at all. I needed to first complete some towers before I could even begin paying people properly. That plan failed. Then I thought about my grandparents. Before this project, we had already spent time together traveling through Bulgaria, documenting abandoned villages, researching our ancestors, and filming small documentaries. So I called my grandfather. I asked him, grandfather, this and this, I have this huge project. I know it will involve a lot of driving, but could you come to Sofia and help me quickly? He agreed without hesitation. I love my grandfather. Looking back now, my grandfather was probably the person who helped me the most in successfully completing this project. When he arrived in Sofia, I was ready. I had cleared some time from my Cambridge online school, organized the files, and planned the first days. My younger brother Anton also joined on the first day, and honestly, that beginning was incredibly fun. At that point, everything still seemed quite manageable, and the first tower was probably the closest tower to our home in Sofia. Okay. Hello guys, today we are doing our very first scan of the cell tower. We have an enormous project of scanning 150 cell towers in entire Bulgaria. This one starts in the city of Sofia, just 10 minutes away from home, but I can tell you that the objects we're gonna scan in the future will be much more far away. So let's go. Okay, so that was it from this side. Let's get to the next one. At the same time, I didn't even realize that simply capturing the tower from the outside wouldn't always be enough. But obviously we didn't know that yet, and we moved on. Okay, so that was the first site. Now we're going to another site in the center of Sofia. And the site is actually up on top of the roof. We don't have to go inside because many of the sites are like partly on the roof, partly in like a server room. But this one will be quick because it's only outside, so it's accessible with drone. Okay, this is the second site, right in the center of Sofia. Let's open the drone and get it airborne.
For now it's quite easy. The locations are quite close to each other, but when we come to the mountains, I can tell you that it will be much harder. And also in winter time, with snow and bad weather. Okay, so the tower is actually up there. We can't see it, but I'll show you on the drone, from the drone. Okay. Okay, this is like the room under the roof. Here we go up here, but first we have to take the keys. Okay, let's go up. So now we are at the top of Sofia. You can see here is the street down there. This is the small cell tower. We have to open these boxes and make some documentation, take some photos, and then go down. Okay, let's try to open these with the key here. Okay. And this we've got to take some pictures of this and document it. Okay, nice. But this view is simply beautiful. I've never been in Sofia in the center on such a rooftop. Impressive. Now let's close these ones. It's very important. Okay, nice and safe. Nice and safe. Let's go down. Got quite warm, so let's take off some clothes. This is the geometries for you. Okay, so the second tower is finished. Now we're heading with the tram to Hemus Hotel, one of the highest hotels in Sofia. And I presume the building, the server room, where we are going to take some photos and document, I presume it will be on the top somewhere. So let's see.
The idea that we would be scanning cell towers on top of one of Sofia's tallest hotels felt surreal. We entered the hotel trying to look kind of professional. I put on my helmet and Anton pulled out a gimbal, even though we barely knew what we were doing with it. And we approached the reception desk and explained that we needed access to the rooftop Telecom installations. The receptionist told us to wait for technical staff. About 10 minutes later, a technician arrived and guided us to the elevator.
What a view. Okay, let's get up the stairs here to the server room. Anton, can you try to open the door? Wow. This is Sofia, from one of the highest hotels. Nice. And maybe this is the cell, or this one, I don't know actually. We've got 3, also one over there. So I don't know actually which one is for scanning. So let's hop on the computer and check that out. See, here we also have one here. Okay, let's investigate that. Let's get the drone airborne.
After the first couple of days in Sofia, the entire feeling of the project changed. Everything inside the city had been relatively close. Home was near, food was near. If something went wrong, we could quickly return. But now we started targeting towers in much more remote parts of Bulgaria. That meant longer drives, more organization, earlier mornings, depending on weather, dependence on timing, and much more physical work. The project became less comfortable and much more real. I remember one tower deep in the Rhodope Mountains. It was late October. The days were already becoming shorter. My grandfather and I had driven deep into the mountains. And actually we combined the trip with a large Orthodox feast at Bulgaria Monastery, since I also sing in the Orthodox Church. The monastery became our temporary base while we captured several towers in the region. One of the towers was far up in the mountains. We drove as close as possible, but eventually the asphalt ended and I realized I would need to continue on foot. I could clearly see the tower in the distance, but it was still several kilometers away. I prepared the equipment, took the animal spray, packed the essentials, and started hiking. Before hiking, I first captured the tower from the car using the drone. Thankfully, the signal range was enough, which meant I didn't need to carry the drone itself uphill.
This hike will be beautiful. I'm in the Rhodope Mountains in Bulgaria. You can see the Rhodope Mountains are known for the beauty, especially on October 22nd, right in the autumn. See, the sun is about to set. This is a cute village here, and I'm going up to the cell tower. Cell tower up here, you can see. I have no idea how long it's gonna take. Maybe 20 minutes, maybe 50 minutes, maybe an hour. So let's see. I'll check in from the top.
Then the real climb began. Honestly, that was probably one of the first moments where I truly felt the physical burden of the project. But at the same time, it was incredibly beautiful. There was no clear path, so I constantly checked Google Maps. At some points, I even tried shortcuts through rivers and forests, convinced I would lose the route. And eventually, I actually did lose the route. Still, I just kept moving directly towards the tower, and eventually I reached it.
Well, we're close now. Here's the tower. It's starting to get dark, and I still have 40 minutes to go back after I scan the cell tower, after I take some smartphone photos. So let's see if it gets dark before I return. If
I opened the shelter, captured the equipment, documented everything, locked it again, and then just stood there quietly for a few minutes, enjoying the view before heading back. On the way down, I quickly realized the sun had already set. And because I had taken an unofficial route through the mountain, I didn't know the exact way back. I decided not to return through the same terrain because it was too risky in complete darkness. Instead, I followed a longer route visible on Google Maps. Soon it became completely dark, and honestly, I got scared. I started running downhill until I finally saw the vague blinking lights of the village below. Only then I did calm a bit down, and eventually I reached the car. Everything was fine. Another moment where I realized the importance of physical endurance happened near a small village in the Thracian lowlands. My grandfather parked near the edge of the village while I prepared the equipment. The tower stood clearly visible on a nearby hill. As I walked out of the village, around 15 small dogs suddenly surrounded me, barking aggressively. Thankfully they were small, but that was one of the moments where I truly appreciated carrying the animal spray in my pocket. Because if the dogs had been larger, the situation could have become dangerous.
It's actually 2:11 p.m. So it's actually quite late, but there was some traffic jam on the highway. But no problem. The most important is that it doesn't rain and it's relatively nice weather. So let's go up there to the tower and scan it with the drone. Quite steep. See here. Maybe it's because I have too much clothes on. So I'll take them off at some point. This is only day 2 of scanning 150 cell towers in Bulgaria. Can't believe it.
Eventually, I reached the tower completely sweaty, only to realize that I had forgotten the keys.
I just realized I forgot my keys for the cell tower. That means I can't get in here. Here. I was supposed to have a key. Now I have to go all the way back to this village.
I was so frustrated. That meant hiking all the way back down, retrieving the keys and climbing up again. But that mistake taught me something very important. Always use checklists, double check everything, and that applies not only in drone work but in life generally. And interestingly enough, later I realized that I could actually have launched the drone directly from the car instead of dragging it uphill, exactly as I did in the Rhodope Mountains. These mistakes taught me a lot, and honestly, I became grateful for them. Some of the most memorable towers were located high in the Balkan Mountains. One of them stood on a mountain peak around 1,800 meters high. Initially, we planned to visit it while working near the Elazığ gold mine, but the engineers there told us, absolutely not, it's way too remote. So we returned another day. My grandmother had casually found a local ATV tour company near Entrepreneurship, and through them we connected with a local jeep driver.
Good morning. It is currently 6 a.m. Today we are planning to go with a jeep to one of the most highly accessible cell towers in Bulgaria. It's on a mountain peak and in the Balkans, and the weather there is often very, very bad because like the weather comes from the north or from the south, and the Balkans stop it. So that's maybe the worst weather in Bulgaria. And but today it seems like it will be nice weather so we can deploy the drone and successfully scan the tower. After that, we'll go with the Jeep to another hardly accessible tower and then go home. So that's why we're starting out so early, to have all the daytime we need. See you.
After waiting in Entrepreneurship for half an hour, a huge Jeep with enormous wheels finally pulled up. Both my grandfather and I were extremely impressed. The road itself was technically forbidden, but locals assured it would be fine. So we started climbing. The Jeep moved through massive rocks and rough terrain that my grandfather's normal car could never survive. After around an hour of driving, we finally reached the tower. The view was unbelievable. We could see Sofia, Rhodope Mountains, multiple Balkan peaks, and of course endless of forests. My grandfather always encouraged me to ask locals as many questions as possible, so I spoke extensively with the driver. He told us stories about the area, including rumors about hidden military bunkers under the mountain, supposedly emergency shelters connected to the government. Whether true or not, it added to the surreal feeling of the place.
Okay, we are driving through a quite dangerous mountain pass here in Bulgaria. We scanned a large cell tower in a huge gold mine, and now we're driving through the mountains, and this is what we see: a completely abandoned tunnel constructed by the communists like a couple of decades ago, and the tunnel is actually almost ready. You can see the hole there, but the asphalt of course is not ready yet, and I don't know if some large jeeps can actually drive through, but it's quite impressive and sad at the same time, because this road could just connect so many people, but otherwise the nature is beautiful.
One of the most beautiful things about the project was that it forced us to truly explore Bulgaria. After the project ended, my grandfather and I looked back at the map and realized we had driven more than 16,000 kilometers. We visited 26 out of Bulgaria's 28 regional centers, along with countless of villages and small towns. At such a young age, the project allowed me to see Bulgaria from a perspective very few tourists ever experience. We constantly visited places far away from tourist routes. I remember one tower near Aitos, close to Burgas. The antenna was located above a small village shop in an almost abandoned settlement. When we unpacked the drone, people from the village immediately gathered around us. That happened constantly throughout the project. And you know, a drone still feels quite unusual in many rural places. I especially remember one elderly woman of Turkish background who spoke fluent Bulgarian. She wore traditional clothes and told us stories about her life. She explained that all her siblings had already passed away, but despite her age, she still had incredible energy. Moments like that stayed with me. I became grateful that the project gave us access not only to infrastructure but also to people, most importantly. And almost every time we didn't know how to access a tower, we somehow found a solution. Someone in the village always knew a shopkeeper, a relative, a local key holder, a guy who knows a guy that has a key. And that part of the experience was genuinely fascinating. One of the towers that caused the most problems was in the Balkan Mountains near Sliven. My grandfather and I woke up early and drove several hours to the starting point. The closest accessible point was still about 5 kilometers away from the tower.
Okay, so we're going up here. You can see maybe 5 kilometers straight up.
I packed my bicycle, food and water and started cycling uphill. At first it looked manageable, but high up the terrain became muddy and covered with fallen trees. Eventually I had to abandon the bicycle and continue on foot.
Well, leave the bike here. It was fine to cycle up, but here is I'm also quite close to the tower, so I'll leave the bike here, lock it, and mark it on Google Maps so I can find it. So I'm sure I can find it after that, and then continue up. Let's go.
When I finally reached the tower, the wind was simply too strong for safe drone flights.
The wind is really tough. This is on the peak, and this is actually an area in Bulgaria where can you see the clouds, how fast they're moving? Oh, I don't know. See?
So I managed to capture the interior with my iPhone, but the drone flight was simply impossible. So we continued to the next tower. A few weeks later, we returned. This time there was heavy mist. I could see on the map that I was extremely close to the tower with the drone, but the visibility was so poor that the drone camera could barely see anything. So once again we had to leave. Finally, on the third attempt, we succeeded. This was weeks after, and we had been planning this so much. And honestly, I was unbelievably happy.
I'm literally flying this tower here for the third time. But now it seems like we made it finally, third time. And this is our most far away object for now. We have 23 objects left out of 150 cell towers. So I'm really grateful and really glad we made this. Okay, maybe it's too early to say that we made it, but the drone, I scanned the tower and the drone is coming back quite fast, 2 kilometers away. But yeah.
The tower became proof that consistency matters when you just keep trying. Another tower deep in the wild involved an encounter I'll never forget. I started bicycling uphill again because my grandfather's car couldn't continue further. Then the bicycle punctured, so I continued by foot. Shortly before reaching the tower, I suddenly noticed a large black shape in the forest.
Folks, I just saw a wild boar. Saw a wild boar here. It was up next to the tower. It was like hidden in this is like more open landscape, but it was hidden in some bushes and stuff. And then I start going up, and then I hear like and running, and I saw like a big round piece of skin. It was a wild boar. Now thankfully I'm down to the bicycle. The bicycle is completely punctured, you can see, so I'll go down, dragging it down.
I had never seen one that close in the wild before. Thankfully, I again had an animal spray, but honestly, after this, I still had to go to the tower, but I was quite frightened, and that's why I blew up some motivational music on my iPhone to scare the animals away. But after that moment, I definitely became more cautious, and honestly, it made me appreciate even more the fact that my grandfather was nearby. After many rural sites, I realized that the work became much less romantic and much more real. In the mountains, we often captured only 1 or 2 towers per day, compared to Sofia, where our record was 9 towers in a single day. Progress became much slower, but strangely enough, the rural towers became the sites I remember most vividly, because of the challenges and the effort, and because of the stories connected to them. Driving together every day became one of the most meaningful parts of the project. When I was younger, my grandfather used to take us hiking or play chess with us at home. Now we were suddenly working together on a real project. He had decades of experience managing construction and industrial repair projects across Bulgaria. And whenever we passed factories, power plants or industrial sites, he would point and say, "Oh, I worked there. Oh, I had construction workers working there. We repaired that facility." And almost everywhere in Bulgaria, he had some kind of memory or story. And through those conversations, I learned not only about the country, but also about my grandfather. My grandmother also helped enormously. Whenever we stayed in Sofia or Razgrad, she prepared homemade food for the road, including traditional banitsa, vegetables, peeled carrots, homemade meals for long drives. And that support mattered more than I realized at the time. One strange thing I kept realizing throughout the project was how important internet access really is in our days. Coincidentally, most of the towers belonged to the same company providing my own mobile internet. And that meant that almost everywhere we traveled, even in remote mountains, we still had perfectly strong internet connection. And because of that, we could navigate, communicate, coordinate logistics, solve problems, and stay connected. We could really do all the things that require internet. It made me appreciate how invisible infrastructure quietly shapes modern life. However, as we captured more and more towers, I started noticing how strange many of their locations were. So most stood in logical places like mountain peaks, village centers, ridges, and strategic viewpoints. And I was curious, and that's why I asked the company when these structures had originally been built. That's when I learned that many of the towers themselves dated back to large radio infrastructure projects during the communist period. Originally, they were designed for nationwide radio coverage, and only later were mobile internet antennas added. That fascinated me, because suddenly the towers stopped feeling like isolated telecom objects, they became part of Bulgaria's technological history. One local jeep driver even showed us his bulldozer he used to maintain the roads leading to the tower. For years he had periodically cleared forest paths so technicians could still access the infrastructure. Hearing these local perspectives made the entire work feel much more alive. Another unforgettable region was Strandzha mountain in southeastern Bulgaria. We drove from Razgrad through the Balkan passes for several hours before reaching the region. The area felt kind of remote, quiet and almost forgotten. And because of its proximity to the Turkish border, many villages looked abandoned. My grandparents told me stories about migrants crossing the border in previous years. Driving through the region felt surreal. Factories stood abandoned, apartment blocks had broken windows. Some places really looked like scenes from a horror film. The roads deep into the mountains became extremely poor. Since we didn't have a jeep, we had to move very carefully and slowly. At one point we almost got lost completely. Eventually we captured the tower and we reached Malko Trnovo, where we stayed overnight. It felt like civilization was bustling here. The next day we needed to capture a tower only a few hundred meters from the Turkish border fence. My grandfather's car could absolutely not reach the site. So once again we searched for a local guide. Eventually, villagers connected us with a former border policeman who owned a jeep. The entire situation felt surreal.
Okay, we just sat in a super old jeep here. It's my grandfather. It's me. This is the steering wheel. So now we are going to a cell tower deep inside the Strandzha mountains.
And because there were cameras everywhere monitoring the roads, the driver explained that because he had previously worked in border police, authorities recognized his vehicle and allowed him access. If we had attempted the route ourselves, we likely would have faced major problems and probably not been able to capture the tower. That was another moment where I became incredibly grateful for the local people who helped us complete the project. One thing the project changed completely was my perception of Bulgaria. Before traveling across the country, I honestly expected the roads and infrastructure to be worse. And of course, some rural roads were extremely damaged indeed, but overall the main infrastructure was much better than I had imagined. In many mountain areas we even saw completely new roads or roads under construction, and that definitely gave me hope, especially in the Rhodope Mountains, known for its poor economic situation. You could feel that despite many villages still looking frozen in time, as if the time has stopped 50 years ago, development was slowly happening. And the nature itself was remarkable. Through the towers, I explored mountain paths and remote regions that very few tourists ever see. I can confidently say that Bulgarian nature is heavily underrated. Outside a few tourist hotspots, enormous parts of the country remain almost unknown internationally, and yet they are incredibly beautiful. At some point during the Rhodope trip, after capturing several towers around Devin, I suddenly remembered that a friend of my mother's, someone we had known back in Denmark, had moved to a small Rhodope village near Devin and built a guest house there. Completely spontaneously, I called her. She immediately invited us. So we drove toward the village of Breze. The road wound higher and higher into the mountains until we finally reached the house. It was beautiful. Autumn colors everywhere, flowers, trees, quiet mountain atmosphere. It felt like a small piece of paradise, I felt. She welcomed us warmly and immediately started preparing food. Forest fruits, fresh salad, homemade soup, and I still remember how incredibly fresh everything tasted. She even invited us to stay overnight at the guest house. We would have loved to, however, we still had more towers waiting for us. So we eventually continued the journey. By the way, I'll share the link to the guest house in the description if you would like to stay there and explore more about the Rhodope Mountains. That stop stayed with me because it reminded me how kind and hospitable people in the Rhodopes can be. Despite the long drives, exhaustion and constant movement, moments like that made the entire project feel deeply human. Toward the end of the Rhodope trip, we had already captured most of the towers in the region. The Rhodope journey itself turned out to be one of the longest and most difficult parts of the entire project. I think we spent around 5 nights on the road before we finally returned to Sofia. Strandzha became one of our final towers in the Rhodopes. It was October 26th, my grandfather's name day. We wanted to complete the final tower early in the morning and then return to Sofia to rest and celebrate. The evening before, actually, we had already captured several towers and originally planned to finish the Strandzha site as well, but eventually it became too dark, so we left it for the next morning. That night we stayed in the nearby town of Dospat. It was interesting because the region is predominantly Muslim. Bulgaria is mostly Orthodox Christian, but in the Rhodopes and some other regions there are areas where Islamic traditions remain very active and deeply rooted. So early in the morning we woke up to the sound of the mosque echoing through the valley. Mist still covered the mountains and it was slightly raining. My grandfather drove me as close to the tower as possible, and from there I continued on foot. Luckily, the tower was quite close. Good morning from Strandzha in the Rhodope Mountains. It's raining, it's quite cold, early Sunday morning. I hope it stops raining because we've got a ground-based tower which needs drone footage, and the drone can't stand the rain, so let's hope it stops. I should be there in a couple of minutes, so see you. Thank God it stopped raining, so I just scanned, took some photos of the inside of this building. Now when it stopped raining, I will deploy the drone. The village still seemed asleep, while a huge herd of sheep slowly climbed through the mountains. For a moment I completely forgot about the project. It felt peaceful, like stepping into another world. The project of capturing 150 cell towers definitely forced me to cooperate with people. The moment I received the project outline in that email, I realized I couldn't execute it alone. I needed my grandparents, local guides, village contacts, technicians, authorities, and many strangers willing to help. The project taught me the importance of communication. Always double check, always explain clearly, and never assume people automatically understand what you mean. It of course also taught me independence. By the end of the project, I had proven to myself that at 18 years old, I could handle a large and complicated operation across an entire country. I learned that people are often much more capable than they actually believe. Many opportunities are just missed simply because people assume, oh, that's not for me, I'm not ready yet, what if I fail, what will people think if I fail? But growth usually happens after you begin, not before. And after communicating with so many people throughout Bulgaria, I also started understanding Bulgarian mentality much better. When I first moved from Denmark, I often felt that I didn't fully understand Bulgarian ways of thinking, Bulgarian values or social dynamics. After this project, that changed. Talking to villagers, local guides, engineers, technicians, grandparents, and just random strangers across the country gave me a much deeper understanding of Bulgaria and its people. And honestly, that became one of the most valuable parts of the entire journey.